All right. What's going on, everybody? This is Richard Cooper, and I'm on with Paul Elam. I guess I should intro it with my brothers from another mother because you guys seem to like that. He's a really cool guy. He's a men's rights activist. He's been to university for psychology. He's just a solid guy that I came across about, I'm going to say, a year or so ago, watching some of his videos on YouTube, and I've subscribed to the channel, and I've shared a lot of the content, and actually some of the stuff that I've talked about on my own channel. I've taken sound bites from Paul, so I want to give a lot of credit to his stuff. His YouTube channel is called An Ear for Men. You're also involved in A Voice for Men, a recent movie that just came out that's gotten a lot of controversy called The Red Pill by Cassie J, which is basically a feminist journey through men's rights activism. I'll kind of let you top up what I missed there, Paul, because I know you've got more of a backstory, and if you could kind of intro to the talk today on what got you to where you are today, like why you do what you do, sort of thing. And then, if you can, for the audience, tell them what your best tips are, so guys can become a better version of themselves when it comes to dealing with intergender relationships, dating, marriages, basically making better choices in life, the stuff that sits in their blind spot that they don't really know about. I'll let you go ahead and start and just give us your backstory.
Sure, I'll be happy to run with that. First, thanks for having this talk with me. I've really enjoyed your work, and
Thank you.
it's a pleasure to be talking to you, particularly on this subject. I guess I should say from the beginning that you covered pretty much where I'm at now. I'm pleased to say that Cassie J, the director of the Red Pill movie, was actually inspired to make that movie after stumbling on some of my more acerbic satire
Yeah.
on the internet, and decided that she wanted to take a plunge into what the men's movement was all about, and got more than she bargained for by talking not just to me, but to a whole lot of men's advocates who were not the stereotypes that she was expecting. And that is reflected in the movie. But I founded and published A Voice for Men almost 10 years ago, after spending a year as editor-in-chief at Men's News Daily, which at the time was the only really heavy volume website that was addressing men's issues at all. But it was actually doing it more from a trad-gone, traditional conservative point of view. And I wasn't really a good fit for that, so I moved on to do my own thing at A Voice for Men. And then a year and a half ago, I started An Ear for Men to deal more with the subjects that you're asking about today. Not so much the political sphere for men, not so much the egregious laws that are being passed that really do bring a lot of harm to men and boys, but looking at how men interact with women, how they interact in the world around them, and how they're living their individual lives, which of course I believe is where our solutions really are. We can't fix all the laws. There's always going to be unjust laws. There's always going to be raw deals out there in the world that we could complain about all day long, or we can get busy improving ourselves and working on our lives and reducing risk, which I think is a big component of that. So to sort of answer your question, what can guys do to become better versions of themselves? The first thing I want to say is that it's important to take everything else I say with a grain of salt, because I don't pretend to be a guru. I don't, or a prophet. I don't have the answers. I've got some ideas that I think are real beneficial for most men, but ultimately every man has to find his own path to self-improvement. And so what I'm talking about aren't a Cosmo style 1, 2, 3 easy steps to make a better version of yourself.
Wait a second. You don't have 67 steps that we can take?
No, I'm afraid not. No, I unsubscribed from the bullshit channel about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I do have some suggestions that I have seen and have had reported to me have been very helpful for a lot of men.
Okay.
And one of them, the very first one that I mentioned, is for men to examine their family of origin issues and sort out what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and to keep what works and to get rid of what doesn't. And by family of origin issues, I mean that we all come from screwed up families in one way or another. I
Right.
mean, sure, there's probably some people out there from Mayberry who, had the perfect mom and dad, leave it to Beaverland. I never met anyone like that.
Right.
Most families are kind of messy. Most parents are not perfect, and we can't expect them to be, but their imperfections do leave their mark on children. And most people carry those things for life. And so there's a benefit to the process of looking at, maybe the shame you were saddled with in some way or another, maybe the pressures that were put on you to be something you're not. A lot of men experience that, especially men trying to please their mothers and parents who want a perfect son who turns out to be a good doctor or a good lawyer. And maybe the guy wanted to play a guitar.
Right.
It's that sort of thing. And that ranges from that all the way to really egregious forms of abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. And so refusing to examine those things, might make you feel safe. It might be a good way to not look at some really difficult stuff. But I found that examining that stuff, coming to terms with it, and it's not a blame game for your parents. It's not so that you can blame your folks for everything that's wrong in your life. It's ultimately about your own accountability, and it's about forgiveness.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Have a great friend of mine that grew up in a household where his mother was a very judgmental, critical person, came from a very tough upbringing, and he found himself in a scenario where he basically married a woman that was nearly identical to his mother. So it's almost like, he kind of went through this red pill awareness moment where he did some clinical work with a psychologist and discovered that it was almost like he was trying to reconcile his differences between his parents by marrying a woman that was nearly identical to his mother, which didn't work out. By the way, he got divorced. I mean, do you have any
Sure.
experience with that? Have you ever seen anything like that before?
Yeah, about a million times.
Right.
There's even a school of thought in psychology that was furthered by a man named Harvell Hendricks. And don't get me wrong, Hendricks is, I think, what most guys in the modern zeitgeist would call a mangina.
Hmm.
Um, but he did come up with a very useful model called an imago. And the theory is, just like I said, that the imprint from childhood lasts a lifetime. You carry those lessons with you. What people tend to do is to pick an image, and that's where the word imago comes from, a sort of a mirror image of a dysfunctional parent, and then they want to seek the corrective experience. Like, I couldn't get my mom to quit being so harsh and judgmental, but I found this judgmental woman, and if I can get her to see the light, if I can fix her and get her not to judge me, then that would correct the experience from childhood. And of course, most of this happens unconsciously, but
Hmm.
it does happen. That's why your friend picked somebody just like his mom. And one of the things I've told many, many of my clients is when they come in to counseling, to take a look at, make a list of everything their parents did that bothered them or hurt them, everything they can possibly think of. And then to make a list of everything that bothers or hurts them in their current relationship.
Hmm.
And every last time, people find very sobering similarities in those two lists because that's what we do. We repeat what we were taught. We recreate the environment of the word is familial. We recreate the family in many ways, and we try to correct that experience. And of course, it almost always falters or
Yeah.
fails in some way. And the benefit of looking at your family of origin stuff is to give you the opportunity to consciously not choose that judgmental bitch that was your mother
Hmm.
for your next relationship.
Right. So just being more aware of the reality in the world that you live in, and basically changing the lenses, in which you view the world, because we're programmed from birth to behave the way that we do today. And I think that, guys, I talk a lot, way more to guys whenever I'm dealing with them on my channel or doing any coaching calls with them on clarity, but they always have this stuff that's sitting in their blind spot. Have you ever ridden a motorcycle, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you're riding a bike, you've got your mirror set and you can see behind you. And before you do a lane change on a bike, because you know that the toll for an accident is considerably higher than what it is being in a car, you're always doing a shoulder check.
Right.
And there's these things, in our blind spots in our lives as guys that are just they're sitting there. And a lot of the time, it takes somebody else to listen to the story to hear it, to point to the facts. And it's always uncomfortable. It's always difficult, but it's going to piss you off, but it'll set you free too once you take that pill.
That's a real good, the bike riding is a real good analogy for this because the way that's set up, the blind spots, is let's say your friend with his judgmental mother. Now, do you think he was allowed to tell his mom when he was 8 or 9 years old, you're a really judgmental person? You're too harsh? Of course not. So he was trained to live in denial about that because mothers are perfect. They're not supposed to be criticized.
Hmm.
A lot of times fathers will play enforcers to that.
Right.
And how dare you disrespect your mother? I'll really show you something. But so the message in the family is you see all this craziness and you see abuse, but you better not talk about it. And that creates a blind spot that you'll carry into a relationship with another person. You'll see it, but you won't see it.
Got it.
And the whole process of sorting this stuff out is to train yourself to see it and then to respond to it appropriately, because that's the other component. Men are horrible, especially with women, about writing a pass for them, especially early in a relationship. We just give it away. Oh, that'll improve, or I can, ignore that for now because the sex is hot and this is all fresh and new.
Why do you
But
think
that,
guys do that? Let's just pause there for a sec because I've done that. I know pretty much every guy that's watching this right now is going to be like nodding their head, going, "Oh yeah, I knew something was up, but I just cast it aside." Is it because we don't listen to our intuition when we're younger? Is it because we just think with the wrong head? Is it a combination of all that? Is it just not a level of self-awareness?
I think it's a combination of one. I mean, there is the matter of sexuality that when we're programmed to scatter seeds. There's no doubt about it.
Mm,
Men are attracted to a woman, and generally anything that would stand in between a guy and a woman he's attracted to is not going to be something he wants in his head very long,
right.
right? But he will, and I think most men will relate to this, is that while he will not entertain those thoughts early in a relationship, while he's still in this sort of conquest phase, that later on, once he's hooked in
Hmm.
and committed to a relationship, he will start noticing these things and they'll start to bother him. But then a lot of times men don't feel like they have the tools to start correcting it. And
Right.
frequently they don't. Because what it runs up against is if I correct this, she's going to dump me.
Hmm.
And a lot of men don't want to admit this, and for some men, it won't be true. But my experience with men tells me that the fear of women abandoning them and dumping them, even a woman they don't even particularly like that much sometimes, is one of the more profound forces of fears in their life.
Huge. Yeah.
Uh, they don't want to be left alone because men tend to not feel really great about themselves if they've been rejected by a woman.
Yeah. Guys I think are almost programmed to try to, seek the approval of women at even a very young age. I remember watching a video that Jordan Peterson was talking about in a lecture where, boys even at a young age, 7, 8 years old, a pretty girl comes out and what they'll do is they'll do something dangerous like balancing act on a picket fence to try to show off and look at my skills. You should pick me over Bobby over there, sort of thing. So it's almost like we're hardwired to do that. And we make big concessions in our lives that are very painful and expensive, to execute on that hardwiring.
And that brings up an interesting point. This stuff is hardwired, and there's reasons for it. I mean, some of this same drive is also what pushes men to excellence,
That's
because
true. Yeah.
going out and making a fortune or being super athletic or anything, that's in one way an equivalent of doing that balancing act, doing something dangerous so that Mary Jane will pick you over somebody else.
Hmm.
Men carry that balancing act their whole lives, and it results in treatments for cancer. It results in landing on the moon. It results in Olympic gold medals and in great concert pieces being written, in wildly, insanely talented musicians. These are all part of the driving force of excellence. And at the same time, if men are not conscious of what this is where you see guys in Hollywood get reamed out over and over again in divorces, and the next thing you know, they're getting another model.
Because that'll solve the problem.
And then you look at your watch and you wait for the next headline to come about how this guy's going to get screwed again. So the force is not necessarily just something for ill effects, but it can be life-ending for men if they're not conscious of it.
All right, good. So your first big point, we started off with understanding your family of origin and what's basically gotten you to where you're at, right? So becoming more aware of what's creating the belief system in which you operate in. I know we talked about this in our last call, and I did a video the other day about how our belief system governs the daily choices that we make, which will give us the results that we get. And you can almost reverse engineer that by just making better choices and updating your belief system. Well, this is embarrassing. We actually had 3 takes at making this video, Paul and I. We had a third one today, and I unsuccessfully recorded another 45 minutes of video with him that was very useful. I'm going to show you what it looks like because I just tried to edit it. That's what last session looked like. You can see the audio track. And this is this one. You can see big gaps in there with the audio track. It's because it only recorded my audio and not the stuff that he was talking about. So it's rendered utterly useless. Now, I just got off the call with him and I took notes while we were talking. So I'm going to do my very best to cover the stuff that he was talking about and distill it. I would encourage you to go to his YouTube channel at An Ear for Men. And I think the best way to kind of navigate through the stuff that he talks about on his topics is to sort by popularity and start with some of the more popular videos and then kind of go from there. But subscribe to his channel. He's got some very, very good content. So Paul, I do apologize. I know we tried 3 shots at this. I'm good at some things. Apparently screen recordings, I'm still failing at miserably. And of course, to my audience, I do apologize, but you get to listen to me yap on for a minute here. Okay, so after he was talking about family of origin, which we just finished, I'm going to leave that. He started talking about men not being able to have genuine mental health without taking the red pill. And when we were kind of rapping back and forth about that topic, what he meant by that is guys need to open their eyes and stop walking around through life, basically sleepwalking, making unconscious choices and decisions, relying on the things that family, religion, media, and all this sort of kind of pressurizes to do. Now, keep in mind, he's been doing this for a long time. He's coached a lot of men. He's been involved in the community for a very, very long time. So he's seen a lot of this. So this sort of narrative that he's telling about, guys, you need to open up your eyes about where you are in life and take the red pill so you understand things like hypergamy and gynocentrism. We chatted back and forth, I think, in our conversation about gynocentrism. And it's like, that's basically where women get kind of extra special treatment. And I know that some women will hate to hear this, but the truth of the matter is, it's accurate. Family law favors women almost 100% of the time. And it's things like, women and children first. When, you saw a movie like the Titanic and the women would get on the boats first, of course. Even as recently as when that airliner went down in the Hudson River and they had to evacuate the plane very quickly onto the life rafts, women were off the plane first. So it happens still as recently even as the earthquake tragedy in Haiti. Aid was provided to women only, not to men. They were excluded from food. So you have to kind of open your eyes to the world that you live in, which is the stuff that he talks about all the time on his channel. I don't want to try to repeat all the talking points that he got into because I'll probably mess them up. So I encourage you again to check out his channel. The next thing that he was talking about, main point that I'm going to distill, was get your money right, fellas, and have financial independence. So what we kind of went on about there was a lot of guys rely on family for financial support, perhaps their spouse or a combination of those things, or maybe even big brother or government. And you don't have options in life to choose, to independently choose to do certain things or to say no to many things if you don't have money. And he wasn't talking about having bucks deluxe, like own a Lamborghini and a big mansion. He's basically saying have enough money and control of your finances so that you have the ability to say no. You have the ability to say no to jobs, to transferring to a different part of the world, to taking certain events, dealing with feminine issues that you don't want to deal with. Basically, have fuck you money is what he ended up calling it. So get your finances in order. And I echo that. Money is not the root of all evil. A lot of, like a lot of the really rainbows, butterflies, kumbaya, let's hold hands and play guitar around the campfire. I get it, but money matters. And it allows you a lot of flexibility and control in your life to do things that you wouldn't otherwise have to do and make choices that can benefit you. So control your money and manage your finance was the next main point that he gave you guys during the talk as well. The next point that I want to go over is guys need to take more ownership for their lives. I know he gets criticized a lot by women and feminist groups for, they basically suggest that he's criticizing them too much, but he actually criticizes men more than what he does women. My experience during our conversation and dialogue was that he really does care. Guys need to take more ownership for their lives. And, I'm kind of touching on the same thing over and over again. It's because we talked about it a lot. And these are things that he's recognized in places where men have gone wrong in their lives and made some bad choices. So heed warning, take better ownership for your lives. It's one of the things that I talk about a lot on my channel when it comes to becoming a better version of yourself is take more ownership for yourself. Understand hypergamy, understand gynocentrism. So hypergamy, in case you guys are new to this, is women tend to marry up. Like a female doctor or lawyer doesn't tend to marry a taxi cab driver or a guy that runs the hot dog stand. But guys, on the other hand, that might be practicing law or be a physician, will easily marry a woman that's in a lower paying, lower skilled job. That's just really what hypergamy is. Women tend to marry up. Men usually don't do the same thing. I mean, the same cannot be said, as far as a pattern goes anyway. So that's about the gist of it. I don't want to mess up the conversation that we have, but that's the distilled version of the last part of the 40 minutes in roughly 6 minutes and change. I'd encourage you to check out his channel, watch his content. I found it very useful. I don't know how I found it, but I think it was around a couple of years ago. I had a breakup and I was looking for information to kind of reconcile myself, and I was going through some videos about men, and his channel came up. And I got a lot of value, and it helped me kind of reconcile a lot of things that I was dealing with myself. And I guess, the elusive red pill happened shortly thereafter, where I opened my eyes to the reality of a lot of things. So take a look at his channel. I hope that you enjoy the content and you got some value out of the first 17 odd minutes of the video where we were talking back and forth. Real intelligent guy. Also check out the movie The Red Pill. Paul Elam's in the movie. He's probably one of the main characters that Cassie J talks to. The general gist of that is she's a feminist that wanted to kind of investigate what the men's right activism movement was all about. Got involved with Paul because of some blogs that he had written a few years ago that were, controversial to say the least. So if you want some more information, check out An Ear for Men. Buy a copy of the Red Pill movie. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave any comments below. And of course, subscribe to his channel. Talk to you guys later. Peace.